The blood on her scrubs wasn't the problem. Sierra had worn other people's blood for 20 years. The problem was that the blood didn't belong to a car crash victim or a bar fight survivor. It belonged to a man who officially didn't exist, brought in by men who carried rifles like they were extensions of their own arms. They didn't check in at the front desk. They didn't ask for a doctor. They asked for her. Specifically, and when the leader of the Navy SEAL team locked the hospital doors from the inside, Sierra realized that going home was no longer an option. Staying alive was. The fluorescent lights of St. Jude's Medical Center hummed with a sound that only the exhausted could hear, a low electric buzz that drilled into the back of the skull. Sierra Lawyer stared at the clock on the wall of the nurse's station. It was 11:55 p.m. Outside, the Washington rain was hammering against the glass of the automatic sliding doors, turning the world into a blur of gray and charcoal. Sierra rubbed the back of her neck, her fingers catching on the loose strands of blonde hair that had escaped her scrub cap. Her shift had been a marathon of the mundane. 2 flu cases, a broken wrist from a slip on the wet pavement, and a localized overdose that had ended with the patient walking out against medical advice. It was a Tuesday night in a town that was barely a dot on the map, nestled between the encroaching pine forests and the jagged coastline. "You're staring at it again," a voice croaked from the hallway. Sierra turned to see Dr. Morris leaning against the doorframe of the break room. Morris was 60, looked 80, and smelled faintly of stale tobacco and peppermints. He was a good doctor once, maybe 30 years ago, but now he was just serving out his time until a pension kicked in. "If I stare hard enough, maybe the minute hand will move faster," Sierra said, turning back to her charting computer. "You're supposed to be in trauma 2, stitching up that laceration. Done. Clean cut. Kid will have a cool scar to show the girls." Morris grunted, moving to the coffee pot. He poured a cup of the sludge that had been sitting there since the afternoon shift. "You're heading out right at midnight? My dog needs to be let out. And my back feels like I've been hauling bricks," Sierra said. She closed the patient file and stood up, stretching. Her joints popped audibly. At 42, Sierra was the head charge nurse of the ER. She was efficient, unsentimental, and possessed a don't-mess-with-me glare that could stop a drunken logger in his tracks. She had moved to this quiet town 4 years ago to escape the chaos of Chicago trauma centers. She wanted quiet, she wanted boring. For 4 years, she had gotten exactly that. "Quiet night," Morris muttered, taking a sip and grimacing. "Too quiet. I hate the rain. Brings out the weirdos." "It's just rain, Morris. Go take a nap in the on-call room. I'll wake you if anyone comes in dying. You're a saint, lawyer." He waved a hand and shuffled off toward the back corridor. Sierra began her closing ritual. She wiped down the counter, arranged the pens, and checked the crash cart logs one last time. The ER was empty. The waiting room chairs were vacant, staring back at her like a row of hollow eyes. The security guard, an overweight man named Gary who spent most of his shift watching fishing videos on his phone, was dozing at his desk near the entrance. 11:58 p.m. Sierra grabbed her tote bag from under the counter. She pulled out her car keys, the metal cool against her palm. She could already feel the relief of her heated car seats. She walked toward the exit, waving a hand to wake the motion sensor of the inner doors. They slid open with a pneumatic whoosh. She stepped into the vestibule, the cold dampness of the air hitting her face. Through the outer glass doors, she saw the parking lot, usually empty this time of night. But tonight, it wasn't empty. 2 black SUVs, completely blacked out with no license plates, tore into the parking lot. They didn't slow down for the speed bumps. They launched over them, their suspensions groaning under heavy weight. They screeched to a halt directly in front of the emergency entrance, blocking the ambulance bay. Sierra froze. Her instincts, honed in the inner-city kill zones of Chicago, flared hot. This wasn't a family rushing a sick child. This was precise. This was aggressive. "Gary!" Sierra yelled, turning back toward the security desk. Gary jerked awake, dropping his phone. "What? Who?" Before Gary could stand, the doors of the SUVs flew open. It happened in silence. That was the most terrifying part. There was no shouting, no panicked screaming. 6 men spilled out of the vehicles. They were dressed in dark tactical gear, not police uniforms. They wore heavy plate carriers, ballistic helmets with night vision mounts, and they carried carbines, short-barreled rifles that were definitely not standard issue for the local sheriff's department. They moved like water, fluid, fast. Sierra backed up, the glass doors behind her opening, as she retreated into the main lobby. "Code Silver," she whispered to herself, though she knew the panic button under the desk wouldn't bring help fast enough. The lead man reached the doors. He didn't have a weapon raised, but his hand was resting on the pistol at his hip. He was huge, at least 6'4", with a beard that was trimmed close and eyes that scanned the entire room in a fraction of a second. He walked straight through the open doors, 5 men flowing behind him in a wedge formation. 2 of them were carrying a stretcher, not a hospital gurney, but a collapsible tactical litter. There was a body on it, covered in a thermal blanket. Gary, the security guard, stood up, his hand shaking as he reached for his taser. "Hey, you can't. Sit down," the leader said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that crushed the air in the room. He didn't even look at Gary. One of the soldiers peeled off and stood in front of Gary. He didn't draw a weapon. He just stood there, an immovable wall of Kevlar and intimidation. Gary sat down. The leader kept walking until he was 3 feet from Sierra. He smelled of rain, gun oil, and old copper blood. He looked at her ID badge, then up at her face. "Sierra Lawyer," he read. It wasn't a question. Sierra locked her knees to keep them from trembling. She crossed her arms, a defensive barrier. "Who are you? You can't bring weapons in here." "I'm Commander Jack Reeder," he said. He looked over her shoulder at the empty nurses' station. "Where is the doctor?" "He's indisposed," Sierra lied. She didn't want Morris anywhere near this. "I'm the charge nurse. If you have a patient, we follow protocol. Weapons stay outside." Reeder stepped closer. His eyes were blue, piercing, and incredibly tired. "Protocol is gone, Sierra. We don't have time for paperwork. And we don't have time for a doctor who's going to faint at what he sees." He gestured to the letter behind him. "We need a trauma bay. Now. And we need you." "Why me?" Sierra demanded, though she was already stepping back to lead them toward Trauma 1. Reeder signaled his team to move. "Because according to your file, before you were a nurse in this sleepy town, you were a field medic for a private contractor in Fallujah. You know how to treat gunshot wounds that aren't supposed to exist." Sierra felt a chill that had nothing to do with the open door. She hadn't told anyone in this town about her past. Not Morris. Not her ex-husband. No one. "Trauma 1, Sierra said, her voice turning hard. "Follow me." The doors to Trauma 1 swung open, and the team moved with practiced efficiency. They lifted the man from the tactical litter onto the hospital bed. "Cut the lights," Reed ordered. "External lights only. Close the blinds. I need light to see." Sierra snapped, reaching for the overhead trauma lamp. "Do it!" Reeder barked at one of his men. The soldier flipped the main switch, plunging the room into darkness, illuminated only by the ambient light from the hallway and the tactical flashlights attached to the men's gear. "We're being tracked by satellite," Reeder explained, his voice low. "If they see the heat signature spike in this specific room, they'll know we're here. Work with the flashlights." Sierra gritted her teeth. "Fine." She moved to the patient. He was young, maybe mid-20s. Pale, sweating profusely. She grabbed a pair of shears and cut away the thermal blanket and the blood-soaked shirt beneath. The wound was ugly. A jagged entry wound just below the left clavicle, bubbling with pink froth. "Sucking chest wound," Sierra announced, her training taking over. The fear vanished, replaced by the mechanical algorithm of trauma care. "He's tensioning. I need a needle, 14 gauge, now." One of the SEALs, the team medic, she assumed was already handing it to her. He was younger than Reeder, with sandy hair and a calm demeanor. "I'm Mike," he said quietly. "He's lost about a liter. I have an IV established in the AC, running Hextend." "We don't use Hextend here," Sierra said, locating the second intercostal space mid-clavicular. "We use ringers. Use what you have, Reader said from the door. He was watching the hallway, his rifle now in his hands. Sierra plunged the needle into the patient's chest. There was an audible hiss of escaping air. The patient gasped, his eyes flying open. He looked around wildly, thrashing on the bed. Hold him down, Sierra ordered. Mike and another operator pinned the man's shoulders. The patient looked at Sierra, his eyes wide with terror. He shouted something in a language Sierra didn't recognize. Russian? Ukrainian? Quiet, Victor, Reader said sharply. You're safe. Sierra taped the needle in place and grabbed a chest tube kit. He needs a tube. His lung is collapsed. If I don't reinflate it, he dies. Dr. Morris needs to do this. No, Reader said. He turned from the door. You do it. I am a nurse, Sierra said, her hands bloody. I am not a surgeon. I can assist. I can prep, but I cannot cut a hole in a man's chest and insert a drain. That is malpractice and it's illegal. Reader walked over to the bed. He loomed over her. Sierra, look at this man. Look at the tattoo on his forearm. Sierra, look at this man. Look at the tattoo on his forearm. Sierra looked. On the inside of the patient's right arm was a small, intricate tattoo of a double-headed eagle clutching a sword. He is a defector, Reader said. A very high-value asset. The people chasing us, they aren't foreign agents. They are a private military company hired to clean up loose ends. If you call your doctor and he makes one phone call, or if he panics, we are all dead. You have field experience. You've done this before. I saw your record. Sierra looked at the scalpel on the tray. He was right. She had done it, twice, in a dusted-out triage tent in Iraq when the doctors were overwhelmed. But that was war. This was Washington. If he dies, Sierra whispered, it's murder. If you don't do it, Mike the medic said softly, he's dead in 10 minutes anyway. Sierra took a deep breath. She picked up the scalpel. I need betadine, lidocaine, and someone to hold the flashlight steady. If you shake, I nick an artery, and he bleeds out. I got you, Mike said, clicking his light to a focused beam on the ribs. Sierra made the incision. The skin parted. She used the Kelly clamps to bluntly dissect the muscle, pushing through the intercostal wall. Victor screamed through the pain despite the local anesthetic. Breathe, Victor, Mike soothed. Sierra felt the pop of the pleura. She inserted the tube, guiding it up and over the lung. Blood swirled in the tube, dark and maroon. Suction, she commanded. Mike hooked up the wall suction. The canister began to fill with blood and air. Victor's breathing slowed, deepening. The panic left his eyes. Sierra taped the tube down, her hands shaking slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. She checked his vitals on the portable monitor Mike had set up. BP 90/60. Heart rate 110, stable, she exhaled. For now. Good work, Reader said. He didn't smile. He tapped his earpiece. Echo 2, sit trip. Sierra couldn't hear the response, but she saw Reader's jaw tighten. Understood. Hold the perimeter. Reader looked at Sierra. We have a problem. What kind of problem? What kind of problem? Sierra asked, stripping off her bloody gloves. The team chasing us just cut the power to the local grid, Reader said. As if on cue, the hum of the hospital died. The lights in the hallway went black. The monitor beeped an alarm before switching to battery power. A second later, the emergency red lights flickered on, casting the trauma room in a hellish, bloody glow. The backup generators will kick in, Sierra said. 30 seconds. No, Reader said, checking the magazine of his rifle. They won't. They cut the hard line. They aren't just trying to stop us, Sierra. They're preparing to breach. Sierra stared at him. Breach? This is a hospital. There are patients upstairs, old people, babies. They don't care, Reader said grimly. They want Victor, and they will burn this building down to get him. The hospital was a labyrinth of shadows. The emergency lights offered just enough illumination to see shapes, but not enough to identify faces. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant sound of thunder, or was it explosions? "We need to move," Rita announced. "Trauma 1 is a kill box. It's on the ground floor, accessible by windows." "Move where?" Sierra asked. She was wiping Victor's chest, trying to clean the site around the tube. "He can't walk." "Third floor," Rita said. "ICU, better defensible position. Only one elevator bank and 2 stairwells. The elevators won't work without power," Sierra pointed out. "Then we carry him," Mike said. "Wait." Sierra held up a hand. "I need to check on the others. Morris. Gary. The patients on the 2nd floor. Rita. The patients on the 2nd floor." Rita stepped in front of her. "No. You stay with us. You are the only medical personnel we can trust. If you wander off, you become a hostage or a casualty. I am the charge nurse of this facility." Sierra poked a finger into Rita's chest plate. It was like poking a tank. "I am responsible for every soul in this building. I am not leaving Dr. Morris to die." Rita stared at her. A battle of wills. Finally, he nodded. "O'Malley, Davis, escort her. Secure the civilian doctor and the guard. Bring them to the 3rd floor. Do not engage unless fired upon. We move in 5. 2 of the SEALs stepped forward. O'Malley was shorter, stocky, with a scar running through his eyebrow. Davis was lanky and moved with a nervous energy. "Let's go, nurse," O'Malley said. Sierra grabbed a portable radio from the desk. Though she doubted it would work, she led the 2 men out of the trauma bay and into the main corridor. The hospital felt alien in the red light. They found Gary, the security guard, exactly where he had been told to sit. He was weeping softly, holding his phone, which had no signal. "Gary," Sierra whispered. "He jumped. Sierra, who are these guys?" They said there's men outside in the woods." "Get up, Gary. We're going upstairs. It's safer. I can't. I have a family." "Move," Davis said, grabbing Gary by the arm and hauling him up. "Or stay here and greet the visitors. Your choice." Gary stumbled along with them. They moved to the break room. Empty. The on-call room. Sierra pushed the door open. Dr. Morris was snoring. Loudly. He hadn't heard the commotion, the power cut, or the arrival of a paramilitary squad. "Morris." Sierra shook him. The old doctor snorted and sat up, blinking in the red light. "What? Lawyer? Why is it red? Is it a fire?" "We're under attack, Morris. We have to move." "Attack? Morris? We have to move." "Attack? Who?" "The meth heads from the trailer park." "No," O'Malley said, stepping into the room. "Mercenaries." Morris looked at the man with the rifle, then at Sierra. His face went pale. I need my shoes." "Forget the shoes," Sierra said. She grabbed his arm. They made their way to the stairwell. As they entered the concrete echo chamber of the stairs, Sierra heard it, the sound of glass shattering on the floor below. Crash. Then, the crunch of boots on glass. Contact front. O'Malley whispered into his headset. "Breach at the main lobby. 3 tangos visible. Get upstairs." Reader's voice crackled in their earpieces. "We are moving the asset now." Sierra pushed Morris and Gary up the stairs. She looked back through the gap in the railing. Below, in the lobby she had just left, she saw beams of white light cutting through the red gloom. Laser sights danced on the walls. These weren't the SEALs. These men wore grey urban camo and full face masks. They moved differently, more aggressive, less fluid. One of the grey men stopped at the security desk. He looked at the logbook. Clear. A mechanical voice said, "Sweep the ground floor. Find the girl. Find the package." Sierra froze. "Find the girl." O'Malley shoved her gently. "Go," he mouthed. They reached the 3rd floor. The ICU was empty of patients. The hospital had been downsizing for months. But the equipment was there. Rita and the rest of the team were already there, setting up a perimeter. They had pushed heavy filing cabinets in front of the double doors. Victor was on a bed in the center of the nursing station, the most protected spot. There inside, O'Malley reported to Reader, at least 10, heavily armed. Reader nodded. He looked at Sierra. You said, find the girl. I heard them, Sierra said, her breath catching. They said, find the girl, find the package. Reader's expression darkened. He looked at Victor, who was conscious but groggy. Victor, Reader said. Why are they looking for her? Victor Croggy said. Why are they looking for her? Victor coughed, wincing as the chest tube shifted. He looked at Sierra with eyes that held a deep, ancient sadness. Because, Victor rasped, his accent thick. She is the key. What? Sierra asked. I've never met you before. No, Victor said. But you know the name Project Chimera. The room went dead silent. But you know the name Project Chimera. The room went dead silent. Even the seals stopped moving. Sierra felt the blood drain from her face. It was a name she hadn't heard in 15 years, a classified bio-research project she had briefly consulted for during her time with the contractor. A project that was supposed to have been shut down for ethical violations. I stole the data, Victor whispered. It is not on a drive. It is encoded. He tapped his head. But I need the decryption key to unlock the files before I die. The key was split. He pointed a shaking finger at Sierra. Your father. He was the lead researcher, yes. My father is dead, Sierra said, her voice trembling. He died in a car accident. He did not, Reader interrupted. He was extracted, and it seems he left something with you. Or in you. Sierra stepped back. This is insane. I'm a nurse. I live in Washington. I walk my dog. You are a living hard drive, Victor said. Or rather, you possess the biometrics to open one. That is why they are here. They don't just want me. They want to put us together. A massive explosion rocked the building. Dust fell from the ceiling tiles. They just blew the stairwell doors, Mike yelled. They're coming up. Reader racked the bolt of his rifle. Discussion over. Everyone, defensive positions. Sierra, get down and stay down. If they get you, it's game over for a lot more people than just us. Sierra crouched behind the nurse's station counter, clutching Morris's hand. The old doctor was shaking like a leaf. I should have retired, Morris whimpered. You and me both, Sierra whispered. She looked at the SEALs. 6 men against a small army. And she was the prize. The first shots rang out in the hallway, loud and deafening in the confined space. The battle for St. Jude's had begun. The silence of the 3rd floor shattered instantly, replaced by the deafening roar of automatic gunfire. The double doors to the stairwell, reinforced with heavy filing cabinets, buckled under the force of a breaching charge. Smoke, thick and acrid, billowed into the corridor, instantly triggering the fire alarm. The strobe lights joined the chaotic dance of the red emergency backup, turning the ICU into a disorienting nightmare of flashing lights and shadows. Contact front, O'Malley roared, bracing his shoulder against a concrete pillar. He squeezed the trigger of his carbine, sending controlled bursts into the smoke. Bullets chewed through the drywall next to Sierra's head. She scrambled across the linoleum, dragging Dr. Morris by the back of his lab coat. Gary, the security guard, was curled into a ball beneath the nurse's station, his hands clamped over his ears, sobbing quietly. Get them to the med room. Reader shouted over the din. He was positioned behind an overturned heavy metal desk, his rifle steady as a rock. Mike, keep Victor down. Sierra shoved Morris into the secure medication room behind the station. It had no windows and a reinforced door. Stay here, she ordered, her voice shaking but authoritative. Don't open this for anyone but me. They have guns, lawyer, Morris stammered, his eyes wide and wet. Big guns. Lawyer, Morris stammered, his eyes wide and wet. Big guns. So do we, Sarah said, though she wasn't sure if we included her yet. She locked the door and turned back to the chaos. The mercenaries, dressed in grey urban camouflage with full-face ballistic masks, were pushing through the smoke. They moved with a terrifying, aggressive precision. They weren't just spraying bullets. They were suppressing specific angles, moving from cover to cover, closing the distance. "They're flanking left," Davis yelled from his position near the elevators. "They're trying to circle the nurses' station." Sierra realized with a jolt of horror that the mercenaries knew the layout. They knew the ICU was a circular hub. If they flanked, the SEALs would be caught in a crossfire with no cover. "I can stop them," Sierra yelled at Reader. Reader fired 2 rounds, dropping a mercenary who tried to rush the gap. "Stay down, Sierra." "The oxygen lines," she screamed, pointing to the ceiling panels above the left corridor. "The main shut-off valve is right there, but the lines run through the ceiling. If they shoot the ceiling, high concentration of O2 plus sparks equals boom." Reader finished the thought. He tapped his headset. "Davis, fall back. The left flank is a trap. They're trying to funnel us." Davis scrambled back just as the ceiling panels in the left corridor erupted. A mercenary had thrown a flashbang, but the sparks ignited the pocket of oxygen leaking from a pipe severed by stray bullets. Whoosh. A fireball rolled across the ceiling of the left corridor, scorching the paint and forcing the mercenaries back. The fire suppression system kicked in, drenching the hallway in a deluge of water, mixing with the smoke and blood on the floor. "Move while they're stunned," Reader commanded. The team grabbed Victor's gurney. Mike and O'Malley pushed, while Reader and Davis provided covering fire. Sierra grabbed the go-bag of medical supplies she had hastily packed. "Where are we going?" Sierra shouted, slipping on the wet floor. "The roof," Reader said, reloading on the move. "Extraction bird is 5 minutes out. We just need to hold the helipad." They reached the stairwell on the far side of the ICU, the one the mercenaries hadn't breached yet. Reader kicked the door open, scanning the landing. "Clear! Up! Go! Go! Go!" Sierra grabbed Gary from under the desk. He was dead weight, paralyzed by fear, and shoved him toward the stairs. "Run, Gary, or die here." Gary stumbled up the concrete steps, gasping for air. Sierra followed, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. They climbed 2 flights. The sounds of battle below were muffled but getting closer. The mercenaries were pursuing, 4 tangos coming up the rear. O'Malley shouted from the landing below. He fired a burst down the stairwell. The sound magnified 100 times in the concrete shaft. "Grenade!" Davis screamed. Reader grabbed Sierra and shoved her through the door onto the roof level just as the explosion rocked the stairwell. The blast wave slammed the heavy fire door shut. "O'Malley!" Mike yelled, reaching for the door handle. "Leave it!" Reader barked, grabbing Mike's harness. "He's gone." That was a frag. The door held, but the stairs didn't. Mike's face twisted in anguish, but he nodded. He turned back to Victor, checking the chest tube. The canister was half full of blood. "He's crashing, boss. Pressure is tanking." They were on the roof. The rain was torrential now, a freezing downpour that soaked them to the bone in seconds. The wind whipped across the helipad, tearing at their clothes. The lights of the town below were invisible through the storm. They were alone on an island of concrete in the sky. "Where is the chopper?" Sierra yelled over the wind. Reader looked at his wrist computer. 2 minutes, hold the door. Reader and Davis took up positions aiming at the roof access door. It was the only way up. "Sierra," Reader said, not looking at her. "Get Victor stable. If he dies before we get him on that bird, O'Malley died for nothing." Sierra dropped to her knees beside the gurney. She shielded Victor's face from the rain with her body. His skin was gray, clammy. He was going into hypervonic shock. "I need fluids," Sierra said. "Mike, give me the pressure bag." Mike handed it to her. His hands were shaking just a little. "They're cutting through the door," he said, nodding toward the roof access. Sparks were flying from the hinges. A thermal lance. "They have heavy equipment," Reader noted grimly. "This isn't a snatch and grab, this is a liquidation." "Who are they?" Sierra asked, squeezing the saline bag to force fluid into Victor's vein. "The Iron Vanguard," Reader said. "Private military. Ex-Spetsnaz, ex-everything. They work for the highest bidder, and right now the bidder is someone who wants Project Chimera buried. The door hinges glowed cherry red, then white. "Here they come," Davis said, raising his rifle. With a screech of tearing metal, the door was kicked open. Reeder and Davis opened fire instantly. The first mercenary through the door dropped, his armor shattering under the 5.56 rounds, but two more stepped over his body, firing behind heavy ballistic shields. "Suppressive fire!" Reeder yelled. Bullets sparked off the concrete around them. Sierra flattened herself against the wet ground, covering Victor. She felt a sting on her cheek, a piece of concrete shrapnel. "We can't hold them," Davis shouted. "They have shields." "Chopper is here," Mike yelled, pointing to the sky. Out of the storm, a dark shape materialized, a Black Hawk helicopter flying dangerously low, its rotors chopping the rain. It banked hard, its side door open. A gunner sat on the edge, a minigun spun up. "Friendly." Reeder screamed into his radio, "Pop smoke." Davis pulled a green smoke grenade and tossed it onto the center of the helipad. The helicopter flared, preparing to land. The noise was incredible. The wash from the rotors flattened the rain against the roof. The mercenaries hesitated, pinned down by the threat of the helicopter's heavy weaponry. "Load up," Reeder ordered. "Mike, take Victor. Davis, cover fire. Sierra, you're with me." They dragged the gurney toward the waiting bird. The crew chief inside the helicopter was waving them in frantically. They were 10 feet away. 5 feet. Mike hoisted the front of the gurney into the cabin. The crew chief grabbed it. That was when the world tilted. A rocket fired not from the roof door, but from the darkness of the adjacent building's roof streaked across the gap. It slammed into the tail rotor of the Black Hawk. The explosion was blinding. The helicopter spun violently, losing lift. The pilot fought it, trying to veer away from the hospital roof to avoid crushing the team. "Get back!" Reeder tackled Sierra, throwing them both away from the edge. The helicopter spiraled down into the parking lot below. A massive fireball erupted from the ground, illuminating the rain-streaked night in orange and black. Sierra lay on the wet concrete, her ears ringing, staring at the empty space where salvation had been a second ago. "Mike," she whispered. Mike was gone. He had been halfway inside the bird. Reeder stood up slowly. He looked at the burning wreck below, then at the door where the mercenaries were now advancing. Their shields raised. "Davis," Reeder said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Plan B." "There is no plan B, Jack," Davis said, and then Davis turned his rifle not toward the mercenaries, but toward Reeder. The click of the safety being disengaged was audible even over the storm. Reeder froze. He didn't turn around, he just stood there, the rain running down his beard, his back to his teammate. "Put it down, Davis," Reeder said. "I can't do that, Jack," Davis said. His voice cracked. He looked terrified, sweat mixing with the rain on his face. "They have my sister. They sent me a video an hour before the mission. They said if Victor gets on that bird, she dies." Sierra stared at Davis, the lanky, nervous tech specialist she had trusted to watch their backs. He was pointing his carbine at Reeder's head from 10 feet away. The mercenaries at the door had stopped firing. They lowered their shields. A man in a black trench coat walked through their ranks. He didn't wear a mask. He had a face that looked like it had been carved from granite, with a long, jagged scar running from his ear to his chin. "Good work, Mr. Davis," the man said. His accent was British, refined, chilling. "You bought your sister some time. Let them go," Davis pleaded, the gun shaking in his hands. "You said you just wanted Victor. Let Jack and the nurse go." The man in the trench coat laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Loose ends, Davis. You know how this works. Tie them up." "Davis," Reeder said, slowly turning around. His hands were raised. "You're making a mistake. These men don't leave witnesses. You think they're going to let you live after this?" "I have to try," Davis whispered. "I'm sorry, Jack." Reeder looked at Sierra. His eyes flickered to the edge of the roof, then back to her. A silent message. Be ready. Move away from the patient, the trenchcoat man ordered. Rita stepped back. Sierra didn't move. She stood over Victor, who was unconscious on the wet concrete, the rain pooling around him. You too, nurse, the man said. He's dying, Sierra said. He needs help. He needs help. He needs to be questioned, the man said. He can die later. Two mercenaries stepped forward, zip ties in hand. They shoved Rita to his knees and bound his hands behind his back. They did the same to Sierra, the plastic biting into her wrists. Davis stood there, his gun lowered, watching his team, his family being executed in slow motion. The sister, Davis said to the leader. Call them. Let me hear her voice. The leader sighed. He pulled a satellite phone from his coat. You are tedious. He dialed a number and put it on speaker. Hello? A woman's voice. Crying Sierra, Davis choked out. Are you okay? Who is this? The woman sobbed. Why am I here? Davis let out a breath he had been holding. It's okay. I'm fixing it. The leader hung up, happy. I'm fixing it. The leader hung up. Happy. Now finish it. What? Davis blinked. The leader blinked. Kill Rita, the leader said, pointing at the kneeling commander. Prove your loyalty. If you do this, you walk away. If you don't, I call them back and tell them to finish the girl. Davis raised the rifle again. He pointed it at Rita's chest. Do it, kid, Rita said softly. It's okay, Rita said softly. It's okay. No, Sierra screamed. She struggled against the zip ties, but the mercenary holding her slammed her face into the wet concrete. Davis was crying now. I'm sorry, Jack. I'm so sorry. He tightened his finger on the trigger. Click. Nothing happened. Davis stared at the gun. He pulled the charging handle. A round ejected, but the chamber was empty. He had fired his last magazine during the firefight and hadn't reloaded. Rita didn't hesitate. In one fluid motion, despite his hands being bound, Rita launched himself upwards. He didn't go for Davis. He went for the mercenary standing next to him, the one with the flashbangs on his belt. Rita headbutted the mercenary in the nose, shattering cartilage. As the man stumbled back, Rita twisted his body, his bound hands snatching a flashbang from the man's vest. He pulled the pin with his teeth and dropped it at the feet of the trenchcoat leader. Close your eyes, Rita roared. Bang! The flashbang detonated with a blinding white light and a concussive force that stunned everyone on the roof. Run! Rita yelled, scrambling to his feet. Sierra didn't need to be told twice. She rode away from her captor, who was clutching his eyes and screaming. The edge! Rita shouted. Sierra! The edge! Are you crazy? Sierra yelled. It was a 4-story drop. Jump. Rita shoulder-checked her, sending her flying over the low parapet of the roof. Sierra screamed as she fell into the void. She expected to hit the pavement. She expected death. Instead, she hit something yielding, a massive industrial dumpster filled with bagged medical waste and soggy cardboard. The impact knocked the wind out of her. She lay there gasping, staring up at the rain. A second later, Rita landed beside her with a heavy thud. He groaned, rolling over. You threw me off a roof, Sierra wheezed. Better than a bullet, Rita grunted. He sat up and presented his back to her. My knife. In my boot. Cut me loose. Sierra fumbled with his boot, finding the hidden blade. She saw through his zip ties. He immediately took the knife and cut hers. Victor, Sierra said. We left him. Davis has him, Rita said, his voice cold, and Davis won't let them kill him. Not yet. He needs Victor as leverage. Davis betrayed us. Davis is compromised, Rita corrected. Davis is compromised, Rita corrected. But he's not a killer. That gun wasn't empty by accident, Sierra. A SEAL counts his rounds. He knew it was empty. He gave us a chance. Sierra looked up at the roof. Flashlights were sweeping the edge. "They think we're dead," Rita said. "We have maybe 10 minutes before they come down to check the bodies." "Where do we go?" Sierra asked. "My car is blocked. The phones are down." Rita looked at her, his face streaked with mud and blood. "You said you're from here. You know the woods." "Yes. I hike them every weekend." "Good," Rita said. "Take me to the one place in this town where no one goes. We need to go underground. The old mines," Sierra said, realization dawning. "The silver mines. The entrance is 2 miles into the tree line." "Lead the way, nurse lawyer," Rita said. The war just changed venues as they scrambled out of the dumpster and sprinted toward the dark embrace of the pine forest. Sierra looked back one last time. High above, on the roof of St. Jude's, she saw the silhouette of the man in the trench coat looking down. She wasn't just a nurse anymore. She was a ghost, and she was the only thing standing between the world and whatever nightmare Project Chimera was. The woods were a chaotic blur of lashing rain and darkness. Sierra Lawyer ran, her lungs burning with the cold intake of air, her scrubs clinging to her skin like a second, freezing layer behind her. The sounds of the hospital, the sirens, the shouting, the roar of the fire faded into the rhythmic thumping of her own heart. Rita was slowing down. Sierra stopped near the base of a massive Douglas fir, grabbing his arm. Even in the gloom, she could see he was favoring his left side. "You're hit," she stated, her voice barely a whisper over the wind. "Grazed," Rita grunted, leaning against the tree. He checked his magazine. 2 rounds left. My sidearm is gone. We are combat ineffective, Sierra. Let me see." She didn't wait for permission. She pulled up the side of his tactical vest. It wasn't a graze. A piece of shrapnel from the rocket blast or the dumpster impact had pierced his side, just above the hip. It was bleeding sluggishly, dark and thick. It missed the artery, Sierra assessed, her medic training overriding her fear. "But you're losing blood. If we keep running, you'll pass out in 10 minutes. "We can't stop," Rita said, pushing off the tree. "They have thermal optics. If we stop, we light up like Christmas trees. They won't see us underground," Sierra said. She pointed through the dense underbrush to a jagged ridge of rock about 50 yards away. The Silver King mine. It closed in the 80s. The main entrance is boarded up, but the ventilation shaft. The kids used to use it to sneak in to party. It's tight, but we can fit. Rita looked at the ridge, then back at the hospital, glowing orange in the distance. "Lead the way." They scrambled up the scree slope, sliding on wet slate. Sierra found the opening a rustic grate that had been pried loose years ago and half hidden by blackberry bushes. She squeezed through first, dropping 6 feet into a tunnel that smelled of damp earth and rot. Rita followed, landing heavily. The silence was absolute. The storm outside was instantly muffled, replaced by the drip, drip, drip of groundwater. "Light?" Rita asked. "Don't," Sierra warned. "If they're tracking us, they might see the beam." "Hold my shoulder." They moved deeper into the earth. Sierra navigated by memory and touch, her fingers trailing along the rough-hewn walls. The air grew colder, stale. "Stop," Rita whispered after 20 minutes. He slumped against the wall, sliding down to sit on the rocky floor. "I need a minute." Sierra knelt beside him. She ripped a strip from her scrub top. "I need to pack this wound. It's going to hurt. Do it." She pressed the cloth into the wound. Rita hissed through his teeth, his body seizing, but he didn't cry out. He was made of iron, this man. "Why did Davis do it?" Sierra asked, applying pressure. "You said he was compromised." "His sister," Rita rasped. "The Iron Vanguard. They don't play fair. They found his weak point. Davis is a good kid, a brilliant tech specialist, but he's not a killer. He couldn't pull the trigger on me, so he gave me a chance." "He still gave them Victor," Sierra said bitterly. "And the data." "Victor." Victor isn't the data, Rita said. You are. Sierra froze. What? Rita grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak but intense. Victor was the courier. He memorized the encryption sequence. But the biometric key, the genetic sequence needed to unlock the drive. It's in your DNA, Sierra. Your father encoded it into your very biology. A viral vector modification when you were a child. You were the living key. Sierra stared at him in the darkness. That's impossible. Is it? Why do you think you've never been sick a day in your life? Why do you heal faster than anyone else? Your father didn't just hide data in you, he improved you. That's why they want you alive. If they kill you, the data is locked forever. A sound echoed down the tunnel. Not a drip. A scrape, a boot on stone. Reader stiffened. He pulled his knife. They found the entrance, he whispered. No, Sierra said, tilting her head. That's not coming from the entrance. That's coming from deeper in the mine. A beam of light cut through the darkness, blinding them. Sierra threw herself in front of Reader, shielding him. Don't shoot, a voice echoed. A familiar, terrified voice. It was Davis. He stood there, silhouetted by his tactical light, his hands raised. He looked like a wreck muddy, crying, his gear hanging off him. Davis? Reader lowered the knife, but didn't sheath it. Give me one reason not to gut you. Because I know where they're taking him, Davis choked out. And I know how to kill them all. He stepped closer, dropping a heavy duffel bag at their feet. They have a bivouac set up in the main chamber, near the lower exit, Davis explained rapidly. They're waiting for a second extract team. The weather grounded their air support. They have Victor. They have my sister on a live feed. God, Jack. They were going to kill her anyway. They always do, son, Reader said softly. I stole this from their supply truck before I ran, Davis said, kicking the bag. C4. Detonators. And a medkit. Sierra dove for the bag, ripping open the medkit. She bypassed the painkillers and went straight for the coagulant gauze and IV fluids. You switched sides again, Sierra asked, jamming an IV line into Reader's arm. I never switched, Davis said, wiping his nose. I needed them to think they won. I needed them to lower their guard. The leader, Kane, he's arrogant. He thinks you're dead at the bottom of the ravine. Raider sat up, the fluids already bringing a hint of color back to his face. He looked at the C4. The main chamber, Reader said. That's directly under the old processing plant, right? Yes, Sierra said. The ceiling there is unstable. It's shored up by old timber. Reader looked at Davis, then at Sierra. A plan formed in his eyes, a plan that was desperate, dangerous, and their only shot. We're going to bring the mountain down, Reader said. Davis, can you rig the charges to blow on a remote trigger? I can rig them to blow if someone sneezes too hard, Davis promised grimly. Good, Reader said. He stood up, wincing, but steady. Sierra, I need you to be the bait. Bait? Sierra asked. Kane wants the key. We're going to give it to him. But first we turn this mine into a tomb. We're going to give it to him. But first we turn this mine into a tomb. The main chamber of the Silver King mine was a cavernous cathedral of rock, illuminated by the harsh white light of the mercenaries' portable flood lamps. In the center, Victor was strapped to a chair, his head hanging low. Around him, the Iron Vanguard operatives moved with casual confidence, checking their weapons and drinking coffee from thermoses. Kane, the man in the trench coat, stood examining a map table. He looked bored. Sir, a guard called out from the darkness of the tunnel mouth. Movement. Kane looked up. A deer? A lost hiker? No, sir. It's a woman. Sierra walked out of the shadows. She held her hands up. She was covered in mud, her blonde hair matted, but her head was high. She walked straight into the circle of light. The mercenaries raised their rifles. "Hold fire," Kane ordered. A slow, predatory smile spread across his scarred face. "Well, well, the nurse who wouldn't die." "I'm tired of running," Sierra said, her voice echoing in the chamber. "You want the key. Here I am. Just let the others go." "The others?" Kane laughed. "The others?" Kane laughed. "The cripple and the traitor? They're already dead, my dear. The woods are unforgiving." He walked toward her, pulling a pistol from his coat. "But you are a magnificent prize, your father's greatest creation." "Let Victor go," Sierra demanded. "Victor is useless to me now," Kane said. "The Victor is useless to me now," Kane said. He raised the gun and pointed it at Victor's chest. Click. The lights in the cavern died. For a second, there was total darkness. Then, chaos. Contact! Reader's voice roared from the ceiling. Reader and Davis were not in the tunnel. They had climbed the rotting timber supports into the upper gantry, 30 feet above the cavern floor. Flares dropped from the darkness, sizzling red and blinding the mercenaries wearing night vision goggles. Rat-tat-tat. Reader's rifle, now reloaded with magazines from Davis's stolen bag, rained fire down on the confusion. The mercenaries scattered, firing blindly into the ceiling. "Davis, now!" Reader screamed. Davis perched on a beam, threw the switch on the detonator. The charges weren't placed to kill the men. They were placed on the support pillars. Boom! 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 The explosions were deafening. The timber supports shattered. The ceiling of the cavernons of unstable rock and slate groaned. "It's coming down!" A mercenary screamed. "Sierra, run!" Reader shouted. Sierra didn't run away. She ran forward. She tackled Kane just as a slab of rock the size of a car smashed into the ground where she had been standing. Kane was strong, but he was surprised. Sierra drove her thumbs into his eyes, screaming with a primal fury. He howled, dropping his gun. She scrambled away, grabbing Victor's chair and tipping it over, dragging him behind a massive piece of fallen mining equipment. The cavern was collapsing. Dust choked the air. "Get to the exit," Davis yelled from above. Raider dropped from the gantry, landing hard and rolling. He was limping badly, but he moved toward Sierra. "We have to go, now!" "Davis!" Sierra screamed, looking up. Davis was still on the beam. The exit route above him was blocked by falling debris. He looked down at them, the red light of the flares illuminating his face. He wasn't scared anymore. He looked peaceful. "Go," Davis shouted. "Get her out, Jack. Tell my sister I tried." He pulled the pin on a second set of charges strapped to his own chest. He jumped from the beam, not toward the exit, but into the center of the mercenary group, trying to regroup near the tunnel mouth. "For the team," Davis roared. The explosion was white-hot and final. It collapsed the entire eastern wall of the cavern, burying the iron vanguard and sealing the mine behind them. The shockwave knocked Sierra and Reader flat. Silence returned, heavy and ringing. Sierra coughed, pushing debris off her legs. "Reader, I'm here," he groaned. He was pulling Victor from the wreckage of the chair. "We're alive, somehow." They were in a small pocket of the mine near the old air shaft, the kids' entrance Sierra had mentioned earlier. The main cavern was gone, a tomb of rubble. They dragged Victor through the narrow tunnel, inch by agonizing inch, until they saw the gray light of dawn filtering through the grate. They collapsed on the wet pine needles outside. The rain had stopped. The sun was rising over the Cascade Mountains, painting the sky in brilliant hues of gold and violet. Sirens wailed in the distance, real sirens, state troopers, FBI, the cavalry, arriving too late for the war, but just in time for the peace. Sierra lay on her back, staring at the sky. She felt the vibration of a helicopter, a news chopper overhead. Reader sat up, leaning against a rock. He looked at Sierra. "You did good, nurse," he said. "Hell of a shift. Is it over?" Sierra asked. "The vanguard is gone," Reader said. "But the people who hired them, they'll be back. Let them come," Sierra said, surprising herself. She sat up, wiping the mud from her face. She looked at her hands that had healed, killed, and saved. "I'm not hiding anymore." Reader smiled. It was the first time she'd seen him genuinely smile. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, blood-stained patch, the trident of the seals. He pressed it into her hand. "Keep this," he said. "If you ever need us, we'll come." By the time the state troopers hiked up the ridge, they found a nurse and a wounded man in a suite. The soldier was gone. 3 months later, the new ER at St. Jude's was bright, clean, and boring. The construction crews had finished repairing the damage. Sierra sat at the nurse's station. It was raining again. Dr. Morris walked by, looking healthier. He had quit smoking. "Quiet night, lawyer," he said. "Just the way I like it," Sierra replied. She looked at the computer screen. A news alert popped up. "Massive investigation into private military firm Iron Vanguard leads to dismantling of illegal bio-research network." She smiled. She touched the small, golden trident pin hidden inside her pocket. The automatic doors slid open. A teenager walked in with a sprained ankle. "Help!" he cried. Sierra stood up, her movements precise, fluid and calm. "I've got you," she said. "I'm a nurse." She walked toward him, ready for whatever walked through the door next. This story reminds us that true heroism isn't about wearing a cape or having superpowers. It's about ordinary people finding extraordinary courage when the world falls apart. Sierra wasn't a soldier, but she fought with the heart of a warrior to protect her patients and the truth. From the quiet halls of a small-town hospital to the terrifying depths of an abandoned mine, her journey proves that when duty calls, we are all capable of more than we imagine. Did this story keep you on the edge of your seat? If you enjoyed Sierra and Reader's battle for survival, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to share this video with your friends who love intense drama, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. What would you have done in Sierra's shoes? Let me know in the comments below.